So there's a lot of other things going on with this truck that I keep getting questions about. And I'll try to answer some of them today since I'm not working on it today. I am like kind of nursing, I think, a hangover because I'm 38 now and I sure as heck can't drink like I could in my 20s. But anyway, um, truck. Yeah, look, my brain's just a fog. Yes, I've gotten a lot of questions about why did I use a Lexus over a different vehicle? Like, how come use the Lexus? So most people aren't aware that Lexus is actually produced by Toyota. We're one of the few countries that get the Lexus brand. So that's kind of cool. But just so you know, Toyota actually makes Lexus. The Lexus Lx470, which is what I'm using, is a Toyota 100 series Land Cruiser. So Toyota Land Cruiser 100 series. They're very good. So the big gains on using the Land Cruiser over any other vehicle. Some of this is my opinion. Other bits of it are fact. Obviously, you could take this camper back and put it on anything. You can put it on a big, heavy one-ton truck. You put it on a dually. You could put it on the little trucks they came on. Clearly, they came on one of the smallest trucks ever made during that era. And I've seen them put on Dodge Cumming diesel four-doors. So the limit is basically you. Whatever you want to do, you can do. But for me, these are my reasons. Number one, the Lexus was available. I was able to obtain that particular Lexus because it had rear end damage and some rot on the rear half of it. And I was able to obtain it from a long-standing customer that I had at the shop. And I took care of the vehicle for a very long time. And I knew the vehicle. And the vehicle has a lot of cool history. It belonged to her husband. And I didn't want to see it die. So I decided to make it the coolest thing on the road. Again, in my opinion. The second reason for using the Lexus over, like, let's say another Toyota. So let's talk about brands. I'm a Toyota guy. I ain't doing nothing but with Toyota. Now I know that is stupid because there are better chassis to use for certain things, but I'm only going to use Toyota. I'm that guy. So anyway, why didn't I use like a Tundra, right? The Tundra is a fair choice. So is the little Tacoma. And obviously so is the Hilux trucks because that's what they came on. And so is the Sequoia. But I'll break down why I did not use those. Number one, why didn't I use the smaller trucks like the Tacoma? So they actually fit really good in the Tacoma. You do have to extend the wheelbase because there's only 18 inches between the bottom of the wheel and the front of the cab. And that's it. I'm sorry. The front of the wheel and the back of the cab, and that's it. That's all you get unless you cut the cab. Now, you would be cutting it open for a passover, but you wouldn't have to cut into it and lose that body roll around the back, which makes it very easy to adhere to. That's actually called the wing wall when you're building campers. And the part of the wing wall on the camper body would made up really nice with the back of the cab of the Tacoma. So you have to extend the frame of the Tacoma. I had a Tacoma I could use, but after a little bit of research, they're a little bit narrow. Their brakes are sufficient for what they are, but they're upgradable, but they don't really come with the best brakes. The engine options are kind of unique. I kind of like that. I really like that they're stick shift, man. I almost forego this entire project because I really like the stick shift. But anyway, the Tacoma 3.4 5EZFE V6 is an excellent engine. It makes plenty of power for the year, and it is extremely reliable, but it's not a powerhouse, and it's also not fuel efficient at all. You get about 14 to 18 miles a gallon on average, depending on what you're doing, what you're pulling. Some of you guys are up there in like the low 20s. Some of you are down there below 14. Again, it's all on how you build it. But I drive a Tacoma for a daily. I've had many, many Tacomas, and I seem to average about 16 to 19 mpg. Now, there's obviously the 5-speed versions, which are freaking awesome because they're stick shift, and there's like really few things cooler than a stick shift camper. It's just like a wow factor. And also the, I think it's a 3RZ or 2RZ. I always get them mixed up because that's the first gen and second gen 4-cylinders. Anyway, the RZ series 4-banger. Those engines are rocket ships for how small they are. I love that 4-cylinder. I like it a lot more than the 5EZFE 6-cylinder. But anyway, both of them leave a little bit to be desired with power. And even though the four banger would get probably 17 to 21 mpg, like the old Toyota truck it was on, it's still like, you know, not kind of quick. And I've done a lot of wheeling and a lot of highway driving on these trips, and I realized what the most annoying thing is when there's an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit and you're like beating the living crap out of your rig trying to do 71. And it's like just super irritating, and everyone's passing you, and that's not going to be me. Okay, I ain't doing that. So that's why I didn't use the little guys. So why didn't you use the Tundra, right? The Tundra literally comes with the exact same engine and the exact same transmission for the year 2005.5 and up. Came with the variable valve timing V8s and the 5-speed transmissions. Before that, it was non-VVTi and 4-speed transmissions. So why didn't I use the big old fat Tundra, right? So the camper back actually fits very well on a Tundra. I mean, like, no wheelbase change, no wheel wall cutting like I had to do, nothing. The sucker goes right on it. And I think the height of the roof to the chassis line is almost identical. So they actually fit really good on a Tundra. And actually they fit really good on a long bed Tundra because you still have a short cab, which would be the way I would have went if I used a Tundra. The big reason I didn't use a Tundra, which is kind of twofold. Number one, and the biggest thing, is the frame. The frame on the Tundra is an open chassis. And that basically means from the, well, it has a specific name, but we'll just call it open frame for now. The front half is boxed up to about the front body mount underneath your feet if you're driving it. After that, it opens up to a open frame, and it's double walled, or a couple little spots of plating on the double wall, open C channel all the way to about the back of the cab. After that, it is just an open chassis with a couple pieces of hold equipment. Because of that, they flex a lot. Kind of like an old F-150 or like an old Ranger from like the mid 90s, late 80s. They just flexed, man. And it was fine for its operation. It was designed to do that. But with the camper back being permanently bolted to the truck and then having its own body mounts, which are not more than hockey pucks, the flexing of the frame is too much, in my opinion. For off-road use, flexing it out, you're probably gonna stress crack the fiberglass and or buckle your floor, or your equipment will move, or the cabinet doors don't shut right. You know, you start getting weird problems like that on the camper part. Truck would be fine. And it would probably squeak like 2 pieces of styrofoam in a windstorm. Just, oh God, I hate that sound. I can't even touch it. But anyway, it would probably make that horrific sound. That alone would make me just sell it. But anyway, that's the big reason I didn't use the Tundra. Also, it's been done. There's something to have on the cool factor of a one-off vehicle. I mean, it just kind of is. I've actually seen one of these on an 80 series Land Cruiser, which is freaking cool, but not a Lexus. So anyway, that's the big reason I use the Tundra. Also, the Tundra suffers from another problem, which is a very basic truck style interior. Very, you know, truck, just kind of boring, not super comfortable. They're not terrible, but they ain't no Lexus. And the other problem is the front suspension is coil spring. And the coil spring design kind of tends to have ball joint failure. It's pretty rare, but it's usually caused by people just not changing ball joints. The way the ball joints are loaded on those trucks and all Toyota IFS front ends except the 100 series, it's loaded in a way that holds them together. So when they wear out really bad, you kind of don't notice it until they eventually just pop apart like a, you know, bad ball joint. So yeah, that's the big reason I'd use the Tundra, is mostly the frame. Okay, so Henry, there's like 20 other Toyota trucks you could have used. Why didn't you use any of them? I'm going to skip all those because you don't got time for that, but I'll touch on 2 that could have been a possibility. The 4Runner. The V8 4Runner is a Land Cruiser Prado or Lx470. That is definitely a contender because it's got that honkin' V8. And again, it's got the VVTi with the 5-speed automatic. And you could pop a rear locker in that bad boy out of a FJ. It's basically an FJ Cruiser. The FJ Cruiser and the 4th generation 4Runner are all based on the Land Cruiser Prado. So anyway, that's an excellent candidate. I would have considered that because the deck height of it, I call it the deck height. The height from the roof to the deck is way closer to the original truck, so I wouldn't have had to do that 10-inch frame extension. But there's a killer on that one too. Mostly, the front end. It has the same front end as the rest of Toyota's IFS trucks in America, the coil spring with the ball joints. And that front end is just a little weak, and you're adding a lot of weight to this thing, and the rear axle is going to start becoming a problem. It's actually going to start becoming a problem with the Tundra. It'll sure start becoming a problem with the 4Runner. So let's talk about the axle real quick since it's popped in my mind. These little axles these things came with, the 84 Toyota trucks, was well overweighted. They had a lot of problems. They got big time sued over it. It was a class action lawsuit, and Toyota had to split the bill with the camper companies and supply them with a dually axle, actually 1-ton full floating axle. After that, Toyota did upgrade the axles into mini trucks, but they were fantastic for the mini truck, but not good for the camper, which is why a lot of them have the dually rear ends on these little 84 Toyota trucks. So the Tundra axle is pretty heavy duty, but it's not that strong as far as the bearings. The axle itself can hold the weight, but the bearings end up getting chewed up pretty quick. And it has the same bearing axle design as the Land Cruiser Prado, which would mean it's the same as the Toyota 4Runner and the Toyota FJ Cruiser. So because of that particular axle design and because of that front end is why I didn't use the Lx470, the 4Runner with the V8, or even the FJ, although you can't buy an FJ because they're too expensive. So that kind of ruled that one out too. So what about the Sequoia? Okay, the reason I didn't use the Sequoia is because it would be the same amount of work to cut it as the Lexus, although the wheelbase would probably be a little bit better, and it is also a V8 and a full box chassis. It still suffers from the same weaker front end design. It would have probably been the runner-up candidate that I would have used. All of these designs work great for what they are and can be upgraded, but for the amount of weight my camper is going to have, I really wanted something sturdy. So that brings me to the 100 series Land Cruiser. So Henry, why is the 100 series Land Cruiser the holy grail of Toyota stuff? Well, it's actually not. It's probably more the 80 series and the 79 series, but we don't get the 79 series, and we also don't have many 80 series left, and we sure don't get any of the bad boy Nissan Patrols, although I wouldn't use it because it was a Nissan. So the Land Cruiser 100 series. The Land Cruiser 100 series is a full box chassis, front to back, and it's actually heavily reinforced on the inside and the outside. There is no frame flex in a 100 series Land Cruiser, actually any Land Cruiser. The 100 series Land Cruiser is an incredibly robust vehicle, and it has two options for rear axle. You can use the older style rear axle out of the 80 series. It is an almost direct bolt-in and is a full floating with a rear locker. If you have the rear locker, it is full floating. So you have a full floating 1-ton axle that bolts directly into this truck. 10.5-inch ring gear can take the heat, and you have a rear locker. Well, that would solve the rear axle problems. Now, the axle that my 100 series currently has is a semi-floating axle with a massive bearings, and it should be fine, but if it even gives a whisper of trouble, it gets the full floating. But it's nice to have the option. Also, the brakes. It has the superior braking system. It has massive brakes. They are huge. They're actually so big you can't go much smaller than a 17-inch rim just to clear the massive brakes. The emergency brake is a baby drum that's almost the exact size as a Toyota Corolla's factory rear drum brake. Everything is just massive. And it's got a nice pull handle for the emergency brake, which I kind of like. The suspension on them is very heavy duty and very upgradable. They sell a lot of very heavy duty coil springs because the 100 series Land Cruiser is a world standard truck. It is in every country and they are used like that. So you can get some big boy springs, air ride, all kinds of cool stuff. Also the bar work, the bumper, the rock sliders, and the fender extension is all accessible because it's a world standard truck. So in countries that have a little bit more bushwhacking to do, they sell this equipment. So it's obtainable, which I like. The transit case is actually offset to the passenger side completely. So the rear drive shaft, everything is moved over to the right. So the differential's over to the right. And because of that, it makes it a little easier to pick a line because I know where my drive shafts are. I don't have one here and one here. So that's kind of cool. Not really a big hitter, but it's kind of neat. It has a center locking differential. It's all-wheel drive all the time, and you can lock the center diff to make it a straight-up part-time four-wheel drive system. It has the pull lever, actual lever, no button, for the four-wheel drive low range and high range and neutral. And also the big difference, other than its incredible structure and superior brakes, is the front suspension. The front suspension on a 100 series Land Cruiser is torsion bar. Torsion bar suspension is basically a huge tempered rod that can twist. It's held here and here, and it twists. Now, you would think like, well, what's the benefit of that of like a big, nice, squishy coil spring, right? Well, there's two huge advantages. One, the energy is not directly into it like a coil spring. The coil spring is directly above the input of kinetic energy. A torsion bar is offset downstream, so that kinetic energy goes up into the system, and it has to go through the control arm and twist down the torsion bar. And the torsion bar's anchored point is forcing the same amount of kinetic energy back to it, thus counteracting its own input. It's a really cool design. And anyway, the longer the bar, the better that is. This Lexus bar is like humongous, and it's fat, and they sell very, very high quality upgrades if you're carrying a little bit more weight. So on top of it being superior as far as an IFS energy absorbing device, not superior IFS, but superior energy absorbing, it has the ability to be adjusted on the fly. If you add weight to it, you could crank the torsion bar keys up, you can tighten them, and it actually lift the vehicle or lower it. So if you had a bumper and you want to bring that front end up an extra inch or a half inch, you actually can, which is fantastic, little cheap. Obviously, if it gets too heavy, you upgrade the bar, but then again, it's fully adjustable height. So that's really convenient instead of playing with springs and spacers or leaf springs and adding packs. It's like, oh my gosh, it's superior. So I'm very, very, very happy to announce the 100 series front suspension. Because of that design, it allows me to add a lot of weight to the vehicle. Let me rephrase that. It allows me to change the weight placement on the vehicle because I can simply adjust the bars to corner balance the vehicle to keep it within its GVW. So because of that front end design, it really aided me using the 100 series Land Cruiser. Also, the 100 series Land Cruiser is wider, so it really fit the camper box really well. I was actually surprised at how well it fit. It was a lot of work to build the wing wall because I had to cut it like right between where the door would be. And it's a lot of work to fabricate a smooth transition between the camper back and the truck pulling it, the Lexus. But in my opinion, it's totally worth it. So those are the main reasons I did not use any other vehicle and decided to use a 100 series Land Cruiser. Also, one of the big boy hitters, one of the big reasons I stuck with using that Land Cruiser instead of a 5-speed camper, which is stellar cool, is that honkin' V8. Oh my gosh, I love that freaking engine. You want to talk about 80 mile on a highway? I'm going to get on a highway at 35 on an off-ramp. People are going to see that stupid thing coming and be like, man, this slow-ass camper is going to be in front of me for the next 50 miles. Oh, not today, buddy. I'm going to hammer down and turn to a little dot. I'm so excited to just freaking open that baby up. And yes, I put headers on it. And yes, it has a nice free-flowing performance exhaust going on it so I could hear that thing suck the gas. Ooh! I don't mind that gas mileage if you're getting the power. So that's the big reasons I use the Toyota Land Cruiser. And on top of all of that, it's a Lexus version of a Land Cruiser. That is super cool because most people are just blinded by the badge. Like, oh my gosh, a Lexus, you know? And yeah, it was once almost a $70,000 truck or a little more. So that's kind of neat. You know, it's like, wow, this is a really cool vehicle, you know, to be cut in half. So in my case, it was a perfect candidate. And that is why I decided to use the 2006 Lexus Lx470 100 series Land Cruiser. All right, hope that answers some questions. If you have any more, feel free to comment. But that's about all I'm doing today. I'm starting to get over my hangover, and I'm feeling much better. Talking to you guys helped. All right, gentlemen and ladies, till next time.